Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to What Would Dorcy Do Friday. It's once again Friday, and I'm coming to you live to talk to you about what I would do in situations where people have come to me and asked a very, very common question. What do I tell my child or children about the behavior of their other parent? So, oftentimes, parents come into our world with, dealing with abuse of some sort, physical, psychological, emotional, different kinds of abuse. And the parent, the recipient of that abuse, is now seeing this happening to their children, and they want to tell their children what happened to them and sort of set the record straight. And I hear a lot of parents say, well, they deserve to know the truth. And I want to tell my children, or I don't know what to tell my children. And so we see this very, very frequently, that parents want to tell their children what happened to them in the relationship. And then they also want to share, if the children are being alienated, they want to share with the children videos, for example, of other professionals or people, maybe even me, talking about parental alienation, or videos of adult children. And they think it's a good idea to share this with their child. And oftentimes, when this happens, it actually backfires, probably most of the time. And the reason that this backfires is the child is in a loyalty conflict with the parents, right? So the child loves both of you. They love you and they love mom or dad. They love your co-parent. And despite whatever caused the relationship to end, and despite whatever discord or abuse or anything that went on in the marital relationship, the child still loves both of you. They want to be in relationship with both of you. I want to talk a little bit about what happens when you're in a abusive relationship and you stay in that relationship and your children observe you being abused. Okay. So if your children observe you in a caustic, psychologically abusive situation or a physically abusive situation, there's the basic fight, flight, or freeze mechanism that motivates us to either act or not act, right? And so children, the basic need for survival is enacted when they observe a abusive relationship in their parental relationships. And so when you leave the relationship, so you're the target of abuse and you leave the relationship, it's usually in a manner of escape. So we've had a lot of people recently talking about how they barely got out alive and they escaped the relationship and they're still traumatized, right? As a recipient of that type of behavior, you may still be processing or not processing, oftentimes stuck in the trauma of the abusive situation. And so you are waiting for your children to figure it out. Oftentimes, parents feel like it's necessary to tell the children, keeping it real, what happened so that they understand. However, this is not a good idea. And there are a lot of reasons why it's not a good idea. But one is that when the child is in the basic survival mode, right, which is what happens when the marital relationship ends and the child is triggered, right, into fight, flight, or freeze, they're going to ally with the abusive parent. Okay. This is counterintuitive. And the reason that they do that is that they are seeing, how do I survive? Okay. So they're going to look at you if you're the target, and the other parent if they're abusive. It doesn't matter the level of abuse or what it is, the other parent, and they're going to ally with that parent because the unconscious mind says this parent will keep me alive. Okay. Even if it's counterintuitive, even if it seems ridiculous, and how could that possibly be? That's why. Now, oftentimes, you as the parent, you escape the relationship, right? You leave the relationship, but it's not in a healthy way. It's an escaping way. You get out, however you get out. And that's all the child sees. Okay. The child doesn't understand, right, what's going on up at this level, in the adult level. The child just loves both parents and the child wants to survive. Okay. So if you escaped, most of you, not all of you, but certainly a large number of you, don't even really realize, especially for psychological abuse, what was going on until you left that container. And then you did some work and you did some research and some educational stuff, and you discovered, oh, this is what was happening to me. And at that point, you want to share it with your children. You want them to know because you've had a revelation. And then it backfires on you. Your kids are like, why are you telling me that now? Or you're just talking bad about dad or bad about mom. And the child will resist that. Okay. They're going to resist it because they love both of you. And then you're left wondering, well, why? I'm confused. Why is my child acting this way when I'm helping them understand what happened? And the child doesn't really need to know all of those things. Okay. The child didn't choose the situation. And when you left the situation and you've now got all of this education and revelations, you want to share it with the child, and you expect the child to be where you are. But some of you, it's taken decades or years or months or whatever to even come to that space, the understanding of what happened. And so you get frustrated when you explain it to your child and they resist it. And they do this because they love you both. And they will always love you both, even when they protest that they don't love you or that they don't want to spend time with you or whatever. That's just simply not true. They love you both, and they need you to do your work so that you can shift how you're showing up. So what I would do differently, instead of telling them what happened, instead of showing them videos about alienation and trying to explain that to them, I would shift how you're showing up in the relationship with them. Okay. Creating that soft place for them to land. So instead of, I call it preach to teach, showing up to preach what's going on, to educate, right? To teach them, which they're going to resist. Then you get in the convince and resist dance with your children. You shift how you're showing up. You communicate differently. Okay. You don't need to speak about the other parent. Your kids know already. They are aware, even if it's on a subconscious level, what's going on. What they want from you is to figure out, to bridge, right? To figure out, teaching them how to be in relationship with both of you. And they know that the other parent, you've heard me say this a million times, the other parent is emotionally unstable, so they're parenting up. But if you are emotionally unstable and they're left to parent up to you, they're going to pick the other parent because that is the parent that unconsciously they think is the one that can protect them. The one that if a big scary monster came to eat them, right, that person will act out. And they don't see that in you. And that's why that happens. And the moment you get into the convince, you try to you preach to teach, show up to explain things to them, they will resist that. And I know a lot of you have been in therapy, and we just talked about this in the Chosen Parent Collective last week or a couple weeks ago about therapy. And there's a lot of mental health providers, who don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to solve this family dynamic. They're involved with your family, surrounding family court, and they're reinforcing delusions, right? They're holding your family stuck. And a lot of parents go into therapy blindly. We go in thinking that the therapist is going to guide a process and lead us out of this. And they don't. They don't, because they are most likely processing their own trauma, right? They're trying to solve their childhood trauma through your family, and that never works. And so many of you have gone into therapy and you think, oh, well, maybe I'll tell the therapist and I'll show the therapist what's going on and I'll give them a video and all of those things. But then you're in a convince and resist dance with the therapist who doesn't want you to tell them how to do their job. Right? So then they dig in their heels even more that you're the problem, that you don't understand your child. You're not listening to your child, right? So what would I do instead? I would shift how I show up there as well. And one of the most simple things that you can do is to heal from your emotional trauma, to really shift the trauma bond, right? To sever the trauma bond that you have with your co-parent. That's what happens when you get together in trauma, right? Then you bring children in to the relationship in trauma. And so when the relationship ends, the marital relationship ends, that's over. But the children bind the family together. You're always a family. Despite how you feel about that other person, despite how they're behaving, the children are bonding your family together. And if that bond is in trauma, then the child is stuck in the trauma as well. And so if this parent is not going to be healthy, is not going to do the work, then you must rise up as the chosen parent and do the work. You have to shift your container, creating that soft place for your child to land. But if you're poking the finger at the other parent, hey, that guy, that gal, that's what they did, then the child resists that, right? The child doesn't want to be in that space. The child wants to be free to love both parents. You heard me mention the Chosen Parent Collective. If you're not part of the Chosen Parent Collective, we'd love to have you. We meet once a month via live Zoom. That's where you get to come and ask me questions. It's a group of parents just like you. They bring their stuff, your stuff, very similar stuff to the collective, and you get to work with me live. That's where you get to ask questions. The Chosen Parent Collective is for parents who want to learn how to show up differently. If you want more of this, but interactive, then sign up for the Chosen Parent Collective. Again, it's once a month. You have access to our online forum where myself and my team and other parents are in there chatting with each other, giving each other advice, really uplifting, and also sharing success stories. There are so many parents in the Chosen Parent Collective that are shifting their families from what they're learning. And it's this stuff, you guys, okay? So it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. I also want to let everybody know here that we are launching a workshop again in the Alliance where we'll put the registration up probably Monday. So you can register for that. Some of you may have taken the class out last year. We've revised, added some new stuff, and we'll be doing it again this year or next month, called How to Get Your Kids Back Workshop. If you're new, welcome. Lots of new content coming to you. So we will start that the first week of March, and we'll talk about it a little bit next week as well. So let's end What Would Dorcy Do Friday with one thing that you can do right now in order to shift how you're showing up, so you don't need to tell your children about the other parent or the behavior of the other parent. And I think a really simple exercise that I even do to really help me shift my emotional container, if you will, or my story, is to write out what it is that I want to share with my children. And then I want to think about how that would land with my child. And then I would shift myself to the child role and process how that lands with you. And then if you have a good friend or a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or somebody close to you who understands what's going on, bounce it off of them. Ask them how it lands with them. Ask them if they were a child, what would they think about that information? Now, let me just say this here, because we all have well-intended friends and family who come to us and they want to help us, right? They want to give us advice, thinking that their advice is the wisdom that we are looking for. Just remember that unless they're in this situation, and even when they're in this situation, oftentimes well-intended advice from friends and family is not the right thing to do. Oftentimes your friends and family don't support you wanting to have a relationship with your children who are acting out, who are treating you poorly. They don't understand the family dynamic. And so they say, walk away. Don't fight for your kids. They'll figure it out and come around someday. But that is also a bad decision. You want to stay connected to your children, and it's how you show up that makes all the difference in the world. So just remember, when you're cleaning up your side of the mirror, right? How you show up in relationship, you're creating that soft place for your children to land. And you want that to feel good to them. You want them to feel safe coming to you. You want them to know that if they empty their trash into your trash can, that you put a good smell good liner in, you're going to take it out and throw it away. You're going to let them empty their trash. You're not going to take it personally, even if it feels personal. Your children love you. They're ready for you to stand on the front line, holding that beautiful container, creating that soft place for them to land. So Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Dorcy Pruder, the CEO and founder of the Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, and I am super glad you joined me here on What Would Dorcy Do Friday, and we'll see you next week on Friday. So peace in so you can have peace out. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.